I on any day I probably read around, I don't know, 30 to 40 long form articles. I'm trying to build that into a book reading habit, struggling a bit right now. But, so online consumption as well as creation has always been my first love. And that's what keeps me busy. When I came across these new age internet entrepreneurs, it blew my mind. I was like, what is this? What is this new thing wherein you're creating something online and it is reaching the entire world? You don't have to build factories. You don't have to, go to another place and set up the businesses there. It was amazing. And I think that's when I decided that I want to do something on this medium. Something, I didn't know what. That I want to do something. I did understand that, no matter what you do, right, if you build a business offline or create content online, at the end of the day, you need an audience. You have to build an audience. People who would come and consume your content.
Hey Abhijeet, welcome to Thousand Faces Club and welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Thanks for having me, Dhamesh. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
We're doing great. It's pretty exciting, and I have like a bunch of questions to ask you about guiding tech and your life and journey as a creator. So before we begin, can you give us a short introduction about yourself and guiding tech for the viewers who are watching here?
So I am Abhijeet Mukherjee, and I have been a digital media entrepreneur for the past decade of my life. And right now I'm sort of, on a sabbatical and, doing some projects on and off. Guiding tech, I actually sold it off in late 2020 to a US-based media company after founding it as a solo founder, then bootstrapping it, growing it, running it for a decade profitably and sustainably. So, that's been my life for the past decade. Initially I started as a content creator, then expanded the business and built a team and everything. Prior to that, I was just working in call centers. I never had sort of a proper corporate job, if you will. Not that the call center life was any less corporate. It was, it gave me quite good lessons and, helped me a lot actually in my journey as a creator and then a business owner. And I would say I like having great conversations. I like reading online. On any day, I probably read around, I don't know, 30 to 40 long form articles. I'm trying to build that into a book reading habit. I'm struggling a bit right now, but so online consumption as well as creation has always been my first love, and that's what keeps me busy.
Right. So how did the interest in consumer tech begin?
We'll just have to first understand where my interest in the internet as a medium came from, and so I think I'll start by that.
Yeah, I also wondered, like, before getting into that, I also wondered, like, which came first? Like, is it your love towards internet or towards consumer tech or towards writing? Because all these three combination is what results in a blog, right? I'm glad that you picked that question up.
Great, and you are absolutely right, and I'm glad you added the writing part as well, because then that will help me tell you a bit of a sort of a historical story. When I was in school, I always loved writing, and see, somehow I was I leaned towards English as the preferred language, as the arts, if you will. I was never that great with the sciences. I tried getting into engineering, gave all the entrance exams, you name it, I've taken it actually. And then I couldn't sort of pass the last barriers in most of those exams. I was always great with languages and with essay writing, story writing. Did a lot of that in a school, and somehow I think that's where my love for writing began, because I practiced it and then I became somewhat good at it. And but how things are when you're in school, what your peers are doing, engineering or medical, right? I think that's still the sort of the things that when you pass out of a school, everyone expects you to do, and that's what I did. I tried, I couldn't get through, and then thanks to the call center phenomenon that was taking shape in those years in India, we are talking early 2000s, and I that was a thing which I thought I could do, because I was able to speak good English, and I had an eye for details and everything. And, anyway, they were hiring like crazy. So I think anyone and everyone was getting in. So uh, so I think, but my interest towards internet as a medium, that really uh, sort of took birth in me in, I would say, around 99 2000, because I got exposed to computers quite late, I would say, because they came to our school quite late. The internet revolution had already begun in the US by then. And I had no idea what the internet was. And on computers I was just learning basic programming, which is what used to be taught in CBSE schools back then. I was in ICSE school, by the way. So but the same sort of curriculum, and then later on C++, Java, and all that. So I think I got exposed to this phenomenon called the internet, the World Wide Web, through the cyber cafes, which had just starting coming up in the city. And they would charge, like, I don't know, I remember quite a bit, 150 or 200 bucks an hour back then. And it was quite costly, but I paid it. And I would pay it and try it. And everything I learned about the internet, I learned it while working on the internet. Like, this is really amazing, because I still remember my first day. I had just heard Yahoo, that, just go to yahoo.com. I went to yahoo.com, and there was a search bar there somewhere on the page, and the news and all. And someone had told me that you can search for anything there, right? Google wasn't very famous back then. And I couldn't even figure out that you had to click on the search bar and type something and hit enter.
Mm.
It took me, I was just trying to just dabble around with the interface, and just I was not able to understand that how to go about searching for something, because that simple act of actually clicking on the search bar and typing something and then hitting enter, I didn't know that. And eventually, after I think two or three visits, I figured that out myself, because I asked someone, and people didn't have the, they everyone had just heard something and then they were passing it over. Nobody had tried it themselves. So nobody could tell me. And then I visited the cafes again and again and figured out a lot of these things. And I started learning a lot of the early days of the internet. That's how I got introduced to Hotmail. Created an email account, also learned the backstory of Hotmail, that how Sabir Bhatia created this.
Mm.
And I was quite amazed that you can just create this on the computer and make so much money. And also, it was like completely different from the traditional industries, the traditional businesses. And somehow I've always been interested also in learning about businesses. I would subscribe to Business Today, Business World, and all these business magazines. And I would just go to a nearby library or a bookstall and hang around there, read this stories of entrepreneurs. And when I came across these new age internet entrepreneurs, it blew my mind. I was like, what is this? What is this new thing wherein you're creating something online, and it is reaching the entire world? You don't have to build factories. You don't have to, go to another place and set up the businesses there. It was amazing. And, I think that's when I decided that I got to do something on this medium. Something. I didn't know what. That I got to do something. And I think that's when my love for internet and the ambition for doing something on the internet, that's how it began. And I would repeatedly visit the cyber cafes whenever I would get pocket money. I would just take my bicycle and go down the cyber cafe near my school and spend a lot of time there. And eventually, I figured out a lot of things, how the internet works. And slowly and steadily, I figured out that there is, this new thing called blogging. And Blogspot was just starting to get popular. And there was this Australian blogger. His site was called Pro Blogger, and his name was Darren Rouse. He was like one of the first, I think probably the first professional blogger. Like, there were already a lot of blogs, people were blogging, and it was just like hobby writing. You would write about anything and everything, whatever interests you. And nobody had thought of doing it as a business. It was like a journal. But Darren Rouse of ProBlogger, he decided to do it as a business, and he was, sort of focusing on how to make money while doing it, how to run it as a publishing medium. And that really interested me because it's sort of, it was at the intersection of two things that interested me: the internet and writing, right? And that was the thing that really piqued my interest. And I started learning about it. I started learning about, how to make a blog on Blogspot. I created a lot of test blogs, tried it out, and that's how it took. These on and off visits to cyber cafes and wherever I could. I mean, there were. You have to understand there were no smartphones at that time, no
Mm.
broadband, nothing. It was all dial up, and then I think some early sort of a broadband. I mean, mobile phones in India that you see, I think Jio launched a sort of a revolution. Reliance Jio was, I think not Jio, Reliance was then, it launched a small phone in for $500, if you remember,
Yeah,
in I think
yeah,
early 2000s. And
yeah,
that brought about the cell phone revolution. And then, the mobile revolution, the smartphone revolution happened after iPhone was launched. So this was all way back. I mean, much before all these things. Like,
right.
so, so eventually time passed and I couldn't get through engineering. I decided to take up a job at call center. Now, when I took up a job at call center, uh, it was primarily somehow I ended up in tech resolution, right? And, solving tech queries. And that's how my knack for tech, that sort of, in it was inculcated in those jobs. Because prior to that, I would say, I mean, I still don't consider myself as a tech geek, or I mean, even maybe a geek, but definitely not, that hardcore geek or nerd. Because my main interest is towards sort of how tech shapes culture, and the intersection of tech, writing, design. So these are the things that interest me: the strategy and the businesses that are built using tech. Productivity, which was my first passion: how to use tech to make yourself productive. So these are the things that interested me. I was never a I never learned coding. I'm not a programmer and all. So when I sort of started with the call center job, uh, I was introduced to this world of how tech can help you, and how tech can help you become more productive, help you get your job done. All these things I learned on the job. uh, I also had some good trainers who exposed me to how computers work, how all these things happen. And I also got a lot of time on the job to pursue my own passion of researching on the internet, and learning, continuing to learn about all these things, and that I did. And eventually, when I got confident, social media was just getting started, and there were these sites like Dig and Stumble Upon, wherein you would post content and it would go on the front
Mm.
page, and it will go viral and it will bring a lot of visits. So I sort of got, I sort of became, I signed up on those sites and I became a power user. And so eventually all these things happened, things sort of started falling into place. And at one point I decided that I think this is the time to quit my job, and uh, s- what I had always wanted to do, something on the internet, maybe just start a blog and see how it goes. It was a big risk then, but I decided to take the plunge, and that's how I started.
How did you convince your parents?
So, see, my dad had passed away long back, so it was only my mom and my brother. And my mom has always been very supportive. She encourages me, to I mean, not take risks, so to speak, but she encourages me to follow what my heart and my mind tells me. So it wasn't very difficult. I told her that, see, this is a risk, and I'm going to quit my job, and I think I can do it. And she said, okay. I mean, if you think you can do it, uh, just do it. Like, don't worry too much about it.
Uh, Understanding blogging is one aspect, right? But when you're quitting a job, you're also the source of money stops, right? And I'm presuming that, back then you probably did not have much examples of people who made it, at least in your cultural context. Like, you definitely had other folks across the country, across other countries, who actually probably made it. Now, what gave you the confidence that this can be more than just a hobby, right? Did you talk to anyone? Did you know Indian bloggers who were regularly sort of generating income from internet?
Yeah, this is a good question, Dharmesh. So you are right, and I think no. So even around the world, there weren't many examples because professional blogging and creating money from content, no matter what kind of content it is, be it text, be it video, be it audio or images. This is a fairly new phenomenon. Like this isn't like people haven't been doing this for decades or for many years. So even then, back then, even outside India, there weren't a lot of examples of people making a sustainable income from, content. People were making money, but most of them were doing it on the side. This was always a side hustle for almost everyone. Very few, so there was, I mean, in India also, there were bloggers who were blogging and, some of them were making money through Google AdSense and other such mediums. But almost everyone I knew, they had a full-time job. They would just do it on the side. I did connect to a lot of people. Some of them I still know, and they were working in IT companies or tech companies, and they had started a blog on the side and just sharing their knowledge with the world, and they were making some money, but nobody had quit their job. So for me, I think there were two, three things. I think one was that the call center hours are quite brutal, and the long cab drives, and it doesn't give you that kind of time to do something in a focused way, right? So that was a challenge. That was a challenge because initially I also thought that maybe I can do this on the side, but I quickly realized that I just can't. Like it won't be worth doing it if I'm doing it on the side. So that was one thing, and another thing is that I realized that this is what I've always wanted to do, and uh, if I don't do it now, then when, right? I mean, see, the finances were a challenge. I was the sole earning member, and I had a younger brother. He was just going to college and all. So those, all those challenges were there. But one thing which I did realize is that I can always go back to that job as long as I can speak good English. I think people will hire me, and of course, maybe not at the same sort of pay scale, or once you're out of job, then going back isn't easy. But it was a big risk, but still I would say it was a calculated risk in a way that I knew that if tomorrow I have to go back to doing something offline, I somehow had the confidence that I would be able to do something, right? And and also the third thing, which was an important thing, is that I did understand that no matter what you do, right? If you build a business offline or create content online, at the end of the day, you need an audience. You have to build an audience. People who would come and consume your content. And since I had spent time exploring social media and I had already become a power user on sites like Dig, I was able to drive people to certain types of content. Like, I would submit other people's articles and they would reach the front page. And, I would get to know from them that, we got like thousands of visitors in a day. So then I realized that, if I'm able to do it for others, why not for my own articles, for my own site, right? So these are the three things I think which played a big part in my decision. Because see, I mean, culturally, as you said, in this cultural context, it takes. I would say it's very very difficult to convince yourself to quit your job. To just
Yeah.
to just let go of that steady paycheck, right?
Yeah. I think
So
it's like a dopamine hit, right? Once you get into the cycle, it's very difficult to sort of get out of a paycheck. Yeah.
also, I think, yeah, I mean, and also you have to understand India doesn't have a social security net, right? I mean, there is
Mm.
no social security pay, so to speak. And, quitting your job, I mean, the system and in the institutions, they don't make it easy, right? That,
Yeah.
just to quit your job and try something on your own. It's not easy for everyone.
Right. I very vividly remember the early days of my internet usage, right? The first time I stumbled upon blogging as a career was when I visited lapnol.org, right? When Amit Agarwal, when I started reading about Amit Agarwal, I found out that he was an IITian, and if you remember, his blog was pretty famous. And
Pretty famous. He
yeah,
actually, glad that you brought his name up. He was one of my early inspirations too. I think he
right,
was probably, when I started, he was probably the only professional blogger in India where, he
yeah,
actually had just quit his job and he was doing it, if I remember
right,
correctly. Or maybe
right.
he probably quit it a little later, or I don't know, but I think around the same time.
Right, right. It also the fact that someone who has studied in IIT has picked up this as a professional, in fact, adds credibility to the blogging itself, right? The
True.
idea of blogging itself. I also remember showing him as an example to my mom and said that, hey, you know what, one day I could also probably become a blogger. This person is sort of doing it, right? Coming
True.
back
True.
to your journey, when was the first money that you made out of internet? Do you remember?
I think that was, digitally, it was quite quick because when
Mhm,
I quit my job and I started this personal blog, I have named it jeetblog.com. It
mhm,
doesn't exist anymore, but I vividly remember I started it on, I think, 4th April 2008. And the first article I published on the site was, 10, 10 productivity tricks for your Firefox browser, something like
mhm.
that. You know, how to make, 10 power tips for Firefox users, something like that. Chrome wasn't born then, right?
Yeah,
Firefox, apart from Internet Explorer, Firefox was like the most popular
yeah.
browser. And I was a Dig Power user, so I submitted the article on Dig, and immediately, the site went down. There was an influx of users, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
I had actually spent money on good hosting. I hosted it on this US based web host, and I think it was Media Temple. And then, I had prepared for this, but it's still, somehow I think it was some bug on in WordPress. And now that I remember this, who helped me out of that situation? It was Amit Agarwal.
Oh,
Because I
wow.
was, I knew, I had sort of had one or two chats with him, but we didn't know each other well. But he was on my IM, right? And at that point of time, I didn't know who to I asked some of my friends and they said, then, talk to your host and all. But I pinged Namit and I said that, see, this has happened. Do you have any suggestions? He said that, most likely it is a plugin in your WordPress. That might have it might have had some bug, and, because otherwise, if you have good caching and, the host is good, this shouldn't happen. uh, I said maybe. Then I asked Media Temple to, turn off my plugins.
Mhm.
And, that's when the site came online, and we turned on the plugin one by one. And it sort of, we found the plugin that was at fault, the rogue plugin.
Right,
And,
right,
I removed that, and the site was online, and it was able to sustain the traffic. And I think then I think my AdSense approval came through quite quickly, within a week or so, and I started making money off AdSense within the first month, right? But I think, but the problem was that it wasn't enough money. It wasn't really coming close to what I was earning.
Hmm.
And, so then eventually I decided that, I'll have to try a few other things. And,
Right.
so I just want to tell you a funny story about my AdSense check. Now, in
Mhm.
those days, the AdSense check, at first it would come in the form of a check, a
Yeah,
proper physical check.
yeah,
And it would come from, I think, Citibank Singapore or some other Hong Kong, if you remember, right? And for me, there was my access check, on the first and second attempt, it wouldn't come, right? There was some issues with the address and something. So it took, DHL took a lot of time to deliver my first check. So basically, the check which was supposed to come in June, it came in August, the
Hmm.
first AdSense check. So, after that, things fell into place. But back then, even getting money into your hands wasn't like, there were a lot of hurdles you had to cross, right? Even setting up a PayPal account, for that matter, I had to borrow my friend's credit card, because, you couldn't use your bank account back then. You
Hmm.
had to use a credit card. I didn't have a credit card. So I borrowed my friend's credit card to open a PayPal account. So,
Right,
these were the
right.
things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I recently was standing in a petrol bunk trying to fill petrol, and somebody came to me and asked that, hey, do you want an SBI credit card, right? And I remember the days that you were telling, right? Where it was very difficult to get anything done. Like debit card was a
Correct.
rare thing, credit card was like unimaginable, and I think we've come a long way where you're standing for petrol and people are asking for credit cards. But it
Seriously.
also it also like with the generation who was just born with UPI, I think they're spoiled, right? Even I can't now live without UPI, but it's definitely a challenge because I remember I studied in engineering 2007 to 2011, right? So I had a friend who had cracked this entire system of how to get like an AdSense check as fast as possible, right? So he would set up account in different people's name. He'd get their addresses, and then the checks would keep coming down to their home, and then they'd be
Wow.
very proud of having these checks. So it was like running like a mini content studio inside engineering, where we never had any interest in engineering, but people would sit together, and there was one side people would be bidding on freelancer.com and taking some projects. There are other people who are interested in content writing would write. Also, it was quite funny, like because they realized at that point in time, writing anything around probably biotechnology or very niche topics had given like high click-through rates or like high pay-per-click
Or high
sort of,
pay per click. Yeah, high CPM
yeah,
rates.
high
Yeah.
high CPM rates. And I remember some of my friends who were from electrical electronics would write articles on biotechnology. Like I'm not sure if they understood anything, but they would sit and churn, and they'll actually go to library and take some books and convert them into articles just to get that
I mean,
AdSense.
these early days were quite fun. I mean, if now that you say, I remember a lot of things. People figuring out the algorithm, what pays more. These because all these things were new, at least in India, at least to
Yeah,
Indians. And how AdSense works, CPM rates, and everything. The value of an account, the age of the account. The more, I mean, the older the account gets, the
yeah,
more trustworthy you become to Google and all that. So uh, a lot of figuring out was happening
yeah,
around this entire content space. And
yeah.
as I said, see, blogging wasn't new. A lot of people in India, like I think the Verma of Seen and Unseen, he used to run
Hmm.
this India Uncut blog. It was, he was probably running it on Blogspot since early 2000s, right?
Hmm.
I think there was another collection. There was this site called Sepoy Mutiny, and this had a bunch of writers. It was a collaborative blog, and I think I'm not sure if Amit was a part of that team, but it had a bunch of quite amazing writers, I would say. Then I think Rashmi Bansal's blog was a big hit back then.
Hmm. Yeah,
Something on youth, right?
yeah. This
Yeah.
was just when she launched her book, also, I guess, right?
I think book
And
launch came a little later, but
okay,
her blog sort of paved, and she was again an IIM grad. And
right.
so, people automatically took interest that, an IIM grad is blogging or writing.
Hmm.
Let's read what is it all about. So there were, this blogging as a thing existed, and, people who were well aware and, who kept track of these things, they knew about it. But
Yeah.
this making money of content writing, right? I mean,
Hmm.
this freelancing for others, which I eventually also started doing. So this sort of, this was not much explored, and precisely because there were a lot of challenges as well, as you mentioned. This actually getting money. So this, these were the things, and those were fun days, I would say. When it comes to content, I think there are two important things that people probably don't think about. One is the intent, and another is the moment, right? The intent is that with what intent you are going to consume the content. So, with our kind of content, the kind of content which I was doing, how to's and guides,
Hmm.
these weren't macro moment or macro intent, right? These were high intent. So the intent was pretty high, but it was micro moment, right? It was like, a small moment, right? I think we are the only site till date in India which has hired from countries as diverse as Peru, and you name it. We have hired in Middle East, UK, US, Canada, of course, Australia, even China. We because see, in those days, I mean, I would just post ads on online forums, and people across the world would apply. I would read up, learn articles on HBR and all these sites. But when it comes to really running the business, there are more nuances. The context is different. Day-to-day things are different. So you have to adapt yourself accordingly.